DaFAQ!
Hey, we've got viewer mail!
Dude!
I forgot to write down this person's name, but I'm sure it's a good one. They're asking about the pull-off technique called Hajiki, specifically on the ni no ito. They said, every time I try to do it, I end up pulling my finger into the san no ito by mistake. Is there any sage-like wisdom, their words not mine, you can impart on, perhaps, how to position my fingers better? Or is it just a matter of practice? This is a very interesting question, one I occasionally receive for both Hajiki and Bachi strikes. Let's tackle Hajiki first, starting with the best way to position our fingers. In general, you want your fingers to be upright. I like to visualize it as walking, with our fingers representing our legs. When you walk, your legs are relatively straight up. What's common for many beginners is that they'll position their fingers somewhat flat to the sole, which, if you were to imagine them as legs, would look something like this. For the general purpose of keeping your tone clear and having more agile fingers, make sure to position your knuckles well above the edge of the sole. Doing it this way, the contact area of your fingers on the sole will be much smaller, more precise, and will avoid your fingers unintentionally contacting the neighboring strings in general. It also makes the Hajiki tone a bit sharper, snapping like this instead of this. So, with our fingers positioned for clean techniques, we can address the issue of the finger pulling into the san no ito when executing Hajiki on the ni no ito. So I'm not sure exactly how far the viewer's finger was pulling into the san no ito, but in general, I always notice that there's a little bit of contact. When the Hajiki is executed cleanly, I still feel my finger faintly graze the san no ito. But that's okay. There's no problem with your finger touching the neighboring string because the string you're actively sounding is the string you're doing the Hajiki technique on. So if your finger taps a string which isn't being sounded, you can't hear it anyway, so who cares? Furthermore, some players will intentionally position their ni no ito and san no ito closer together so that when they execute Hajiki on the ni no ito, they will fully pull into the san no ito in order to sound both strings. I know at least Nita Masahiro and Agatsuma Hiromitsu used to do this like 15 years ago. I don't know if they still do this, but in general, at least for the Tsugaru style, having the finger touch the neighboring string isn't something that's necessarily shied away from. Finally, some folks have a similar concern about the bachi touching the neighboring string. When they strike ichi no ito, often the blade will touch the ni no ito, and same for san no ito when striking the ni no ito. Again, just like with Hajiki, contact with the neighboring string during the technique can't be heard, and so it's absolutely fine. Hope that clears things up. Kyle Abbott.